So what are the things you must check before you start your car engine?
Okay, thank you very much for your question. So what we have here today is Acura RDS 2022 model. So this is a modern car and quite sophisticated compared to the ordinary cars that we have out there. So it makes some of the things that you need to do as a driver quite easier, especially when you have most of these modern cars. But what I will try to do is I'm going to talk about the modern cars and as well talk about if you're having any of those old model cars, what you are supposed to do. Usually some people, especially those who have quite sophisticated cars like this or modern cars, maybe ranging from 2017 upwards, they feel some of these things are not necessary. But as a driver, there are certain things that we term as best practices that every driver, irrespective of the car that you use, you need to go through that process before you start your engine. Because as we all know, car is a machine and anything can happen, even be it a brand new car that just pulled out from the manufacturing shop. So for me, the most important things that you need to check as a driver before you move your car is you need to check the level of your water. Because if your car overheats, you know that you can easily get your gasket bent, or the car can easily be overheated. So you first of all, early in the morning, once you pop up your bonnet, you first of all check the level of your water by opening your water tank. I can't open mine because I've already run the car this morning. I've gone through that whole process. So the first thing is you have to go through checking your water level by opening the water tank. And usually the water tank, at least it should be at the neck. It shouldn't be filled to the brim. It should always be at the neck level. And one thing that I also advise is, of late, most of the drivers do prefer putting water in the water tank instead of the prescribed fluid for the water tank. The disadvantage of using water is because most of the water that we have here, it could even contain a bit of salt. So if you decide to put water instead of the fluid that is specified for the car, what happens is with time the corrosion that can occur. So you see that in no time you start to have leakages on your radiation tank. So it's always advisable to keep the right fluid in your car, or the coolant in your car.
So how would you know the right coolant for your car?
So usually it is written either on the top of this, or you should refer to the user manual. If it's a modern car, you have the user manual to help you, to give you the specified one. However, there are a lot of them on the market, and I think to use any of them is preferably better than using water. So I will always entreat drivers to go for that. And then the second thing that you need to be very mindful, and even that is the most important, is to check the level of your oil. Okay, so this car has already been run, so you can't really see. However, you see that when you pull the stick, okay, you have some markings on the stick. Okay, the first one is the minimum, and then the second one you see up here is the maximum. Okay, your car should at least be filled to the maximum. It shouldn't pass the second mark, which is the maximum. It should always be at the maximum, and then it can be reduced at least, maybe just slightly under the maximum. But anything at half, already your engine is at risk. So you always have to pay attention, and this is the reason why it's very important for you to always check your oil level. Usually most people will say that, okay, with these sophisticated cars, the dashboard is going to display if you have a shortage of oil. However, it could be that you just did your services after the new oil was poured into, the person may have not even tightened the bolt well. Okay, so it's not going to be a constant, it's not going to be just once that the oil is going to pull out. It's going to be a droplet of oil that will keep coming. So with time, okay, the level of the oil is going to reduce. And if you don't perform these best practices as a driver, and then you rather decide to base your assumption on, okay, I have a good car and all that, it's true, but then before you realize that the oil level has reduced, okay, by then your engine has wear and tear has already started in your engine. So it's always advisable to check your oil level every morning, irrespective of the car that you have. The oil level is something that is a must that you have to. And if you check and it's above it's anything around the maximum mark, then you are good to go.
Okay, so if you know that you have enough oil, why do you have to check it daily?
Okay, so as I said, you don't check it because you have enough oil, but you check to know that the level of the oil in the engine, it's okay. Okay, and the second thing that we'll talk about, but that really applies to most of these cars, especially the taxi drivers, the trotros and all that, those commercial cars, or the anything below the 2015, 2016 vehicles. Most times, you check the oil in order to know by the density or the thickness of the oil. You could tell whether the engine has overrun and the oil is due for change. Okay. For example, my car, which is a 2022 version, when you start the car, on the infotainment system, it can tell you the percentage that you've run. Okay, and anytime maintenance is required, it's going to display. So for such a car, you don't check the oil just because you want to see whether it's time for oil change, but you need to check constantly to see that even if there is a reduction. And also the oil actually speaks a lot. The level of the oil speaks a lot. Okay, you may have you may buy a car. The person may tell you, okay, it's a brand new car, or probably it's a second-hand used car. It's a good car. The engine runs very smooth. Okay, but you will never know the performance. You can see a clean engine, but the engine may have already been gone. Okay, so by running the car and constantly checking, it will give you information, because you are going to see that the level of the oil will start reducing, and that is how you know that, okay, the performance of the engine. Also, by opening your bonnet to check the level of the engine, it also helps you to know in case there is anything like leakages around your gasket or the openings. Okay, and this can happen to a brand new engine. It can happen to any car. So it's part of the best practices. You don't only check because you know that your oil is filled, because you can fill your oil today. As I said, maybe the boat or through which you dispense the oil when you are changing your oil, probably the person refused to tighten it well, and there could be droplets of oil that will be leaking. It's not going to go at once for you to know. So maybe I changed my oil yesterday, I checked it the following day, everything was okay. I decided to just leave it, forget about it, because I know that I've changed my oil. Ran my car for, let's say, 2 weeks or maybe 1 week. Before you realize, or before you decide to check the oil again, you see that it has reduced from the maximum mark, maybe to about half or just a little bit under the maximum. By then, already the wear and tear has already started going on, because you know in the engine we have pistons running in and out, and this pistons requires the oil for easy movement. Okay, so when the level of the oil reduces, it means anytime there is a movement of the piston, there is a bit of scratches, so there is always a bit of wear and tear that keeps happening. That is why it's always advisable to check your oil engine, because it tells you more about the car.
Okay, so if the oil reduces, how will you know the type of oil you must buy from the market?
Okay, that's a very good question. So I'm going to put this stick in. Okay. And anytime you insert, you have to always check and see that you have actually pushed it in correctly, because if you just leave it hanging like this, thinking you've inserted it well, they could still be, once you start accelerating, there could be spillage of oil from this side. So it's always advisable to QC, to check it well and see that everything is intact. And also, to come back to your question, when you look on top of this, where we usually pour oil, okay, on top of that, we always have the the specification for the oil required for your car. Okay, so for example, mine is SAE. Anytime you see SAE, it means it's a petrol car. Okay, and then or what other people or in other countries refer to as gasoline. Okay, and then we have something like OW20. Okay, so the OW20 actually, those numbers significantly stands for the density of the oil. Okay, the thickness of the oil. For example, this car has OW20. Okay, so it means for places where the weather is extremely cold, like Canada and other places like Russia. Okay, if you use any oil or the incorrect oil, because of the cold weather, the oil can freeze when the snow starts falling. Okay, so it's always advisable to use the correct oil. However, within Africa, most people don't pay attention to it because we have a constant weather. So people try to, because I remember I went to change my car oil when the car came in fresh, and the mechanic who was working on the car decided to put 5W20 instead of 0W20. And to him, he said even this one is better for the car because of the weather that we have here. But later on, when I came back after reading through the manual, I'm like, the manufacturer is always the best. He knows the car well. So 2 weeks after spending money to change the oil, I still change it to the original oil, and that is what I've been running on. So I think it's always advisable to check on top. And if this is missing, now we have ChatGPT, we have Google. You can just Google the car name, the model, and then you can actually get these information. They are readily available on the internet, and it's always advisable to get access to this before you decide to put any oil in your engine.
Okay, so what's the next thing you should check again?
Okay, so now I've spoken of checking the water level in your radiation tank. I've spoken of the oil. The next thing, which usually you can just see from standing here, is your brake fluid. Okay, so we have the maximum and then we have the minimum. Okay, anything under the maximum is perfect, but anything below the minimum, your car is already at risk. And you know, everything is controlled. Anytime you move your car, the next thing is to brake. And on our road system, if you don't have enough brake fluid, you know, it becomes very difficult. You may be applying the brakes, you may be working, but you don't know when your brake is going to fail due to this. So it's very important to check. And usually this tank is very transparent, and due to the color of the oil that is put in, that's the brake fluid, you can even see the level from, if it's not hidden, if the tank is not hidden. Mine is quite exposed, so you can actually see the level from here. So you can see that mine is not even up to the maximum, but it is not below the minimum. So this is perfect for moving. And then the next thing that I would like to talk about is the washer fluid or the wiper fluid. Usually most people don't pay attention to this, but it's very necessary, especially in Africa, where, especially during Harmattan or even during the rain season. Okay, sometimes you require a bit of water to spill on your screen so that the wiper can do a job. And one thing that people don't know is usually you don't even use your wiper when there is no fluid on the windscreen. So the main objective of the wiper, it's more or less like, you see, it's rubber that is rubbing on the mirror or on the windscreen or whatever glass you have. Okay, so if the place is not wet or lubricated, it causes some scratches on the windscreen.
That's true.
So always, before you use your wiper, it could be that you just saw a dust or anything that is blocking your visibility. You always have to apply the washer fluid so that the wiper can do its job. So it's always advisable to check the level. And this one, usually, how will you know that it's reduced? You will need to check. You need to check. Even mine has reduced. However, with this sophisticated car or this modern cars, it's going to display anytime it goes beyond the minimum. You are going to have a notification on your infotainment system or your dashboard telling you that you need to top up your washer fluid. So once I think you've gone through these practices and everything is okay, as a driver, you are good to go.
So what is the effect of not checking all these things before starting your engine?
So you know, try not to check this thing. These few things that you just have to check by just popping up your hood and then checking can save you a lot of tons of money. For example, let me start with the radiating tank, or let me start with the water tank as people refer to it. You know, as I said, usually when you have the fluid, the original fluid specified for the tank, okay, because it's the chemicals that it helps, it does not evaporate like water. Okay, so constantly you have your fluid on the level that the car needs. However, if you replace it with water, then constantly you have to check, because you know water evaporates. So the more the engine is running, the more the engine becomes hot. There is a bit of evaporation going on, and this is the cause of overheating, especially in places like Africa or even around the world where we have a lot of traffic here and there, and you know, speeding on the. So this is supposed to cool the engine. So if we don't have enough water, then definitely there's going to be overheating. And if you don't pay attention, usually most drivers, we don't even pay attention to you may actually be looking at your dashboard, but you wouldn't really be paying attention to the signals that are coming unless you see a red light. Okay, and before you see a red light, it means the overheating has already happened. And there is two things that can happen. It's either you are safe, okay, because you saw it earlier and then you decided to stop the engine, or by then your gasket is gone, which will cost you a lot of money to open the head, the engine head, and then replace the gasket. So you can save yourself a lot of money by just doing these small best practices, just opening the tank, checking the water level. If you have actual water in, you just stop it a bit. But if you have this coolant or the specified fluid, I think you're okay. Usually you don't have to even top it up. But the only reason why you check is there could be that there is a bit of leakage. Even if though you have the specified fluid, there could be leakages on your tank. So by checking this fluid, it helps you to know that okay, something, and it also gives you information. Okay. Once you check and then you realize the water is reducing, now you can diagnose and see that okay, why is this thing happening? Is it that okay, there's some overheating? Okay, I've been driving my car the whole day. There was no signal of overheating. My engine temperature was at the constant place. Then you can try to check around and see if there is any leakage, especially it could be a burst of a hole, because a hose, water hose, okay, or it could be just this socket that is holding, or this thing that tightens the hose to the radiator tank that has reduced. So I mean, as a driver, I think constantly you always have to do this. When we come to the engine side, as I said, usually when the car runs with oil, so basically as human beings, as we have blood flowing through our veins, and anytime you know your blood level goes down, you can just collapse and then you are gone. Okay, that's the same thing applies to the car. The oil is actually the blood that the car runs with. Okay, so if the oil is reduced to the minimum, then your engine is tantamount to failure. So you can't be driving the car. Especially there was something that happened actually. We have one of our car that got broken, and what happened was the car was sent to my mom, and we decided to get a young driver to use the car. This guy did not go to a driving school, so he did not know how to read the signals on the dashboard. Okay, and he decided not to also check the oil. And before he realized, the oil light was showing, but he did not even know the meaning of that signal. So the guy kept firing, and all the pistons in the engine got bent. The engine head even cracked because he was speeding. And the totality of it all is we have to replace the engine, and you know how much an engine will cost. So I mean, just checking these few practices actually helps you. It can save you a lot of money. Okay, and then the brake fluid, which is also very important, because if anything should happen, the only thing you can do is to apply a brake. And anytime you have a low fluid, because it is The fluid, okay, so what the oil fluid, let me just throw more light on this thing. What the brake fluid does is, it does not lubricate. But then anytime you apply a brake, okay, it is this fluid that pushes the brake pads to the how do we call it, the disc, so that the car decides to brake, okay. So if you don't have enough brake fluid, what happens is anytime you try to apply brake, you maybe have to be pushing the thing. There could be that there's a burst of hose, okay. So anytime you step on your brake, the fluid will spill from that side, okay. So in no time you're just going to feel brake, because there wouldn't be, you'll be applying your brake and then nothing is happening, because there is no fluid that is pushing the disc, the pad to the disc. And this is most of the time the cause of a lot of accidents on our road, because people fail to check these things. People fail to take pay. And my advice to the commercial drivers is, even not only early in the morning, let's say you are running from one station to the other, or any time you run from one point to your destination, it's always advisable to check these things, because as a commercial driver you are carrying a lot of lives, okay. And those cars are always, I would say, they are always over pressure more than all these private cars, okay. So the level of usage of some of these things is way higher than the private cars. So anytime you park at your station, it takes nothing from you to pop up your hood or check all these things.
Okay, so is it advisable to also check your lighting system before you start up a engine?
Okay, so that's a good question. Usually the lighting system, you can only know if your lighting system is bad in the night, okay, because in the daytime like this, except for this cars that has all this how do we call it, all this LED lights, so you can check and then see the rays of the light and see that, okay, it's functioning properly. Yeah, but most of these old cars, when you put the light on in the daytime like this, you cannot tell, okay. However, there are some lights that are very important. For example, your travigators, okay, and then your brake lights. Those lights, even in the daytime, they are going to shine, because that shows whether you are turning to the left or to the right. So it's usually advisable to check them. But sometimes even the car communicates to you a lot. If let's say one of your travigators are not working, you see anytime you put on that travigator, you see that instead of the normal go and come, it starts to function very fast. Like usually when you try to shoot a travigator, you can hear some noise like ta 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 ta. But then when one of the lights is not functioning, what you see is ta 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 ta. That should also send an information that, okay, one of my travigator lights are not working. And usually the car communicates to us as a driver. If you know your car, or you are an experienced driver, usually before you sit in front of your car, before you start your car in the morning, the car, even the sound when you start the engine, sometimes it's always advisable to listen if there is any funny noise in your engine. It's always advisable to pay attention to this.
So in conclusion, what we're saying is that it is very important to check all these things as a driver before you start up the engine, right?
Okay, so I'm not saying it's important, it's actually a necessity. What if you are a driver? I think that you don't have to be selfish. Don't think about the time, how you are in a hurry to get to your destination. Think about even others on the road. Your carelessness can end lives. So it's a necessity before you start your car in the morning. It's always advisable to go through all these normal routines or these best practices to know that your car is safe to be on our road systems. This can help to reduce the number of accidents, especially the commercial drivers. I'll still come to that. Especially the commercial drivers, because you are carrying lives and your car is always on the road. So it's always advisable to please check some of these things before you start your car. And if you see that anything is not functioning properly, please get the best mechanic to always work on these things for you, because life is only one. You only live once.
All right, so thank you very much for your time.
You're always welcome.